What's good, everyone? It's Nigel here, Trinidad Empowerment Network. So with the general election fastly approaching, there's two main things on people's mind in Trinidad. And that's the cost of living and crime. That's the two main topics for people voting in the upcoming election in a matter of days or weeks even. But I feel we need to ask ourselves, are the solutions being given to us by politicians, by police commissioners? Are these solutions really working? Or are we repeatedly doing the same thing, expecting a different result? Are we repeatedly doing the same thing and expecting a different result? And I feel that's exactly what we are doing. So here's a video of people of Trinidad being interviewed on the street as to what their main concerns are as it relates to the upcoming election. Let's have a look and see what the vast majority of people believe and what their concerns are, the reason as to why they would and would not be voting. Let's have a look.
My number one issue is the affordability of life right now, and the second issue is definitely crime. Yeah, and I'm not voting for any party who doesn't have a good platform on crime or a proven record.
Me like UNC, I would like UNC to come back in power. You understand? I mean, because change something too now. I mean, she do more good than the next one. You understand? I mean, but still, crime will still go on because nobody is stepping up on crime.
So do you think the government could fix crime?
Nah.
Any government?
Nah, only God could fix crime.
I was held up Carnival Monday, choked, thrown out a car, my bag taken. So it has effect. But I'm all right because I prayed about it. And I have forgiven them.
This happened this year?
Carnival Monday. And they choked me. And they threw me out the car and had black and blue marks all over. I reported it to the Belmont police station.
Wow.
And I went to the hospital to make sure if everything was all right.
Nothing to do political party. That is crime. That is this small man out there fighting for survival and they're killing and shooting, right? And you have to do something about it. That is why we have a law. So the law has to deal with that, right? So the people up there have to put things in place to deal with it.
Well, I yet to read through their manifestos, but given their track record, particularly two main parties, are undecided, very much undecided. But I could definitely say that I open to any party with a good platform.
It's not only police, it's the judiciary system have to fix as well. Because it's like a revolving door. They're arresting them and then they're coming out on bail.
Why thoughts? Why right now we confused by we don't know the thoughts. We don't know who to turn to the help right now. Just man. We don't know who to turn to the help. Oh, you hoping for the best still, right? You hoping for the best still. You see how it goes.
It's difficult as citizens to live in all of this, that's happening. And because where I am in Central, in Chin, a lot of murders happen, and I feel what we could do as a people is to trust Christ, put God in it, because He can do all things for us. Yeah, we can't put our trust in man because, they can't do nothing for us.
Okay, so you saw some of the solutions, you saw some of the feelings, the anger people have, the frustration people have. And most of it seems to be surrounded or around tougher sentences and more powers for police. The judicial system got mentioned as well. And everything seems to be around the same thing. More policing, tougher sentencing. The judicial system needs to do better. People are being locked up and they are going in and then they back out. And of course, people say leave it in the hands of God. And whilst I understand that this is what people are being told, what they see predominantly on the news from police commissioners and MPs, etc., these are tried and tested methods that's been used throughout the world, throughout Trinidad for decades, right? We've tried these tougher sentencing, we've tried these tougher laws, we've tried all of this, more technology, giving the police more brutal power. And we tend to see what happens as a result of giving the police more power. They use that almost brutally to abuse citizens sometimes as well. So the abuse of power is prevalent in countries like Trinidad coming from the police sometimes. So that's another thing that we have to be mindful of when we give more powers to, excuse me, the powers that be. That power can potentially be abused. Nonetheless, the rationale or the reasons given, I hear from the general public, and that's these people that we saw interviewed represents the feelings of the public at large in Trinidad. So if you were to poll most people in Trinidad, the general consensus is what these people had to say on the streets here today. I believe about 70% of Trinidadians believe the issue really lies with the police and the fact that they do not have enough powers or the technology, etc., to help in the fight against crime. Now, I wanted to relay some facts to you today as to what the solution really is, and it never has been what the general public has been told to believe. And I can't blame people for believing that. You believe what you're told. The people, the government we elect and put in power, they relay the facts to us. And if they are constantly telling you the reason is this, and you haven't worked in that system or you don't do your own research into what causes crime, then you are likely to believe whatever you're told by the government, or whatever you're told by the police commissioner, or whoever you align yourself with politically. You are likely to sway on the side of what they are telling you. So I don't blame the public for what they believe. However, I am here to give you the facts as to what really reduces crime, and it's mostly nothing of what was mentioned here in this video today, from the interviews done on the general public and their belief. So according to studies, and these are studies done worldwide from the Brennan Center for Justice and the National Research Council, so you could look into those, the Brennan Center for Justice and the National Research Council. According to their studies, longer sentences have little to no deterrent effect on crime. Longer sentences has little to no deterrent effect on actual crime. And that's research studies. But if you were to poll the vast majority of the general public, they would tell you that prisoners need to go to prison for a lot longer, and that would solve crime. You could only look at places like America, Trinidad. We don't know it, and most people don't actually realize the death penalty is still actually legal in Trinidad, as it is in America, in certain states in America. I believe there's only 21 states in America where it is actually illegal, but the legality of the death penalty still exists in Trinidad and America. Yet you find if you go to America, and as we know in Trinidad, crime is as high as anything. The crime rate in America is as high in certain states as anything. And those are states with the death penalty. Do your research into that. And I don't have to tell you about the crime rates and figures in Trinidad. So this idea that tougher sentencing makes crime go away is for the birds. And I want people to understand this as well. Now, if I'm going to lock you up for life, put you in prison for life and throw away the key, you go to prison at the taxpayer's expense. Now, I'll give you some numbers in the UK. We don't have life, or they don't have life sentences in the UK, by the way. Most people get out. It's very unlikely that you will get a life sentence in the UK. Yes, there are. Let me correct myself. There are life sentences in the UK, but it's very unlikely that you will get a life sentence or a life sentence in the UK. You have to have done something extremely, like a serial murderer, terrorism, etc., and you may get a life sentence in the UK for those crimes, but predominantly you don't get life sentences in the UK. And if you look at the maths and you look at the numbers as to how much it costs to put someone in prison for life, it's astronomical. And that comes at taxpayers' expense, by the way. So in the UK, it's about £44,000 a year. That's a lot of money. That's way over 100,000 TT dollars. £44,000 a year to keep a prisoner or keep someone in prison, whether it be for life or for however long they are in prison. So the prison system is not cheap, because if we keep them in prison for life, we have to look after them. They have to be taken care of. As much as people would say, lock them up and throw away the key, that doesn't happen. You have prison guards, you have food, you have clothing, you have all the stuff that you need to keep people alive has to be respected. And if we don't, then we're in breach of some sort of international law. So we have an obligation to look after people in prison. The point I'm making is it costs money to look after these prisoners. That's another thing that we don't take into account. People also say the death penalty, just kill them and get rid of them. It actually costs more. The death penalty actually costs more than keeping someone in prison for life. And this is something that people actually don't know or don't understand. You say, does it cost more to kill them than it does to keep them in prison for life? That's a logical question to ask. The reason is the vast majority of people on the death penalty challenge the fact that they are on the death penalty. They challenge it. And the cost to challenge the death penalty comes at the cost of the state, meaning you, the taxpayers. You pay for them to challenge this system, the fact that they're on the death penalty. And the cost of that is astronomical. It's astronomical. And it goes through the system, and they get a retrial. It goes through the system again. A decision is made straight away by the judges, right? So it repeatedly goes through the system, and they're on death row for years and years and years and years, and the system is challenged. Yes, the death penalty hasn't been used in Trinidad for years, not since Dole Chady and his gang were executed in the 1990s. If some of you were old enough to remember the takeover, the coup in Trinidad, I certainly do. They were the last people to be executed. The death penalty still remains legal, but it hasn't been used since. I believe the opposition leader has called for the return of the death penalty. That's just political nonsense. That's just to get you on side or get people who are in line. Like I say, 70% of Trinidadian believe tougher sentencing is the solution. So if you tout for something like the death penalty, you are likely to get the people on side as a solution. The reality is it does not work. Despite government or successive government spending millions on national security, murder and violent crime continue to rise, as we've seen in Trinidad. We hit a record last year of 633, I believe, murders. So the government has increased their budget on technology, on national security, on policing. Believe it or not, they have been increasing the budget on national security and policing in Trinidad. Yet, the murder rate hit a record high of 633 last year, 2024. I believe we're already over the 100 mark this year, 2025. So we're on record, despite the state of emergency, to topple last year's record-breaking number. And that's despite an increase in the budget for national security. So we go back to the idea that the solution is, better policing or tougher sentencing or the judiciary system, or it does not work. If you stay with me to the end of this video, if you stayed with me so far, I appreciate you, and I will give you the solution. If you're a first-time viewer of my videos or my video, then I will give you the solution as to what the solution to crime really is. So this is not my opinion. This is research done worldwide, not just in Trinidad, in the UK, in America, in Europe, in Portugal, in places across Europe, Eastern Europe, etc. Police don't need more guns, like I've already made clear. The police don't need more this or more that. Yes, we need policing. I'm not making any argument against policing. Policing is needed in every community, every country, every part of the world, irregardless. Unfortunately, policing is needed, and that's just because we are who we are as human beings. We need policing. We have people who will, for whatever reason, decide to go out and rob and steal, whether it be poverty or greed or jealousy or whatever it may be. We will always have people who decide to do horrific crimes. I don't have to mention what those crimes are. Human beings are unfortunately wired in a certain way. So crime is always going to exist. So this is not me saying, making an argument to get rid of the police. This is just me making an argument to suggest that the tactics we're using, the money we're spending on the same thing repeatedly is not working. We need more. What we need in countries like Trinidad, and yes, I had a discussion with someone on one of my videos I did recently, where he suggested, respectfully suggested, that you have poverty all over the world and you have countries that are poorer than Trinidad, namely in Africa and some parts of Asia, that don't see the high crime rate that we see in Trinidad. He also said that Jamaica is has a lower crime rate than Trinidad. I can tell you that's categorically untrue. It's not. In 2023, Jamaica's murder rate was well above what Trinidad murder rate was. And that's some numbers I did some research on from 2023. So yes, we are higher. Or we are lower than Jamaica. That's nothing to boast about, but we are lower than Jamaica. So that's factually incorrect. As it relates to poorer countries having lower crime rates. Now, you have to look at the socioeconomic structure of these countries, right? So if you live in a country where the vast majority of people that you live amongst, that your community, some remote part of Africa where people still live in shanty towns and mud house and whatnot. If you live in those environments or in that area, in that specific town or whatever, you are living amongst people who are just as poor as you are, right? You are living amongst people who are just as poor as you are, as opposed to, say, somewhere like Trinidad, where there are people with money in Trinidad. There are people you can target in Trinidad. If you're living amongst people who are just as poor as you are unlikely to rob these people. You are very unlikely to rob, because what are you going to rob them for? They haven't got anything to be robbed for in the first place. So, of course, the rate of robbery and crime is likely to be lower in these countries. There's multiple things I could talk about here as to why in some poorer countries it can appear that the crime rate is lower. You also have to look at the reporting of crime, the technology they have to report crime. You have to look at the leadership that they have as well. The leaders in their country likely to release the actual crime figures. So there's a lot of things that goes into this as to why it may show that in poorer countries sometimes that the crime rate is lower. But it still remains that the number one thing that causes crime is poverty. The number one thing that causes crime in every research done worldwide, it has always been poverty, and it always will remain poverty. The minute you address that issue, and that's research facts, the minute poverty is addressed, you see a de-escalation in crime almost immediately. Always, you put money in people's pocket, whether it be through schemes, through whatever means, you see a de-escalation in crime. That's a fact. So there is no argument to say that poverty does not cause crime. The facts are clear. The facts are clear. So, I've given you the rationale and the reason as to what we need to do to resolve the crime issues in Trinidad. We need to invest in apprenticeships for youngsters. Gangs are the biggest issue in Trinidad as it relates to crime. So instead of joining a gang, give them the option to get jobs, to have somewhere to work, to give them the means to look after themselves, to make money, to put themselves on a property ladder, to give themselves a reason to live, to give themselves hope. We have to invest in communities, right? So a kid coming home from school has somewhere to go to at the end of school, right? They're not hanging out on the streets. They're not hanging out on the street corners. They're not getting up to nonsense. They go to somewhere that would teach them or help or educate them. A social club where there is computers and there is stuff that they can actively do to keep themselves engaged, so they don't stray along the wrong path. Because at that age, they can be easily influenced. So if there's a guy in the neighborhood who's driving a nice car, who's got the best pair of sneakers, who's got the nicest clothes, youngsters are easily influenced, and they're likely to want to be like that person by any means necessary. So if that person's a local drug dealer and the way he makes his money is doing that, they're likely to think, oh, wow, This is the way he's making his money. Let me get involved. Let me try and make myself some money as well. But if you give them an alternative, you give them, opportunities, you give them jobs, people are way more inclined to go towards doing good as opposed to doing bad. That's just human nature. No one really wants to be, believe it or not, unless you're psychotic, no one really wants to be a murderer, or a drug dealer. Or, no one grows up. No one goes to school, in primary school. When you ask someone, what you want to be, the baddest kid in primary school, you ask them what they want to be. No one really wants to say, oh, yeah, I want to be a drug dealer, or I want to be this. And the only reason they would say that is they try to sound cool, or they try to have seen something on a film that they often glorify. Hollywood films often glorify the drug dealers and whatnot, right? So these kids, they see these films and they, oh, this looks cool. But at the core, most of our youngsters want to be decent, good, upstanding citizens. If that wasn't the case, we'd have anarchy, right? The country would be finished. If everyone wanted to be a bad man, if everyone wanted to be bad, a bad boy, or then the whole world would be finished. People are inherently good. People are inherently decent people, and they want to do good things. And yes, we do have the bad apples amongst us. I don't think that's ever going to go away. I think that's just who we are as human beings, unfortunately. But generally, people want to do good. And we have to tap into that. And this idea that locking people up and throwing away the key and tougher sentencing from police, we have tried this multiple times. I'm telling you, this is not the solution. So when you hear politicians and police commissioners say the same thing repeatedly, please don't buy into it. Start using your intellect to think outside the box rather than keeping yourself in the box and trying the same thing and expecting a different result. It is indeed the definition of madness. So I would go on to say that Trinidad, I try and touch on this topic brief. I've taken enough of your time. If you've stayed with me so far, then big respect to you. Please like and subscribe, by the way. I need more subscribers on this page. We need to create a movement. We need to grow and get bigger. So just a quick reality check, right, into the cost of living crisis in Trinidad. Now, Trinidad has an over-reliance on import. We over-rely on importing the products we have in Trinidad. In fact, you may not know this, but Trinidad imports 80% of its food. 80%. That's insane to me. 80% of the food in Trinidad is imported. We are not self-sufficient. We have everything in Trinidad to be self-sufficient, especially when it comes to food. But yet, we import 80% of our food, and a lot of it comes from America, believe it or not. Now, the UK hardly imports any food from America because they believe so much of the food in America is full of chemicals. They hardly import foods from America. It's full of rubbish and like stuff that really bad for you. I'm telling you, like, it's really bad stuff. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to healthy food. That's all I do. It's really bad for you. So the UK and Europe don't import food, or very rarely import food, especially meat and whatnot, from America. It's bad for you. Their processed food, their snacks, full of all sorts of sweeteners and whatnot. It ain't good for you. Trust me. Don't. There's a reason. So when we import food from foreign countries, whether it be America or whoever we import from, the importers, the people importing the food, set the price, set the standard. These are the wealthy people in the Caribbean, right? People who import food, you need food to eat. If you don't eat, you die. So you need food, right? So they import the food and they set the price. They set the price at which the food goes out for sale in your supermarket. They set the apples and whatnot. They set the price. Of course, they buy it to the knockdown price at a much lower price than you pay for it in the retail stores, right? They set the price. This is how they retain their riches. They stay rich, right? So they set the price, and the price is often unaffordable for the average citizen in Trinidad. Unaffordable. So until we get on top of that, this import prices, and especially with the tariffs now coming in, and by the way, a tariff is a tax. Don't call it a tariff. I don't know why they call it a tariff. I need to look into why that word tariff came about. A tariff is a tax. So if the importers, the people selling the food to us, put tax on it, and they say instead of costing $100, it's going to cost $150 to the importers. So I'm importing the food into Trinidad, and now I'm paying $150 because of the tariff that Trump has put on Trinidad products. Then now I'm paying $150 for it. I got to sell it to you, the consumers. How much do you think I'm going to sell it for? How much do you think I'm going to sell it for? I'm selling it to you for $250 because I'm going to make a profit on this, especially if it's food and you need it. Everyone needs food. You need to eat, right? And because you now can't afford it, you probably go and rob someone to get the money to afford it. This is how crime happens. This is how it starts, guys. This is how it starts. So if you can address that issue, you can see why if people are not desperate, not desperate to, there's no need to go out and do stupid things and commit crime. So this is why your food is so expensive, because we import everything. We import everything. You look at the likes of China. China have invested in local agriculture, right? They've invested in local agriculture. This is why China is going to win this trade war with America. They're going to bust up America in this trade war because everything made in China. China like, what? Come, I'll show you. We make everything in China. We make everything here. So we don't have to rely on no import. We manufacture everything, food, everything. They do everything over there, right? If Trinidad, the little island that we are of 1.4 million people, imagine we tapped into agriculture and we start making our own food. Imagine the energy that we have in Trinidad, the natural gas that we have in Trinidad, we use that instead of sending it to foreign countries. We invest in ourselves. Because when we send the gas, by the way, and the oil to these foreign countries, we don't see the wealth. The wealth doesn't come back to us. It stays with them. People talk about foreign investors. You see my previous videos. Oh, foreign investors are coming. The foreign investors only work if the money stays in the country. And whilst I agree that these foreign investors don't come in because they're charitable, they don't come in because they like Trinidadian. They come in to make money, yes. But if you're not redistributing a lot of the wealth that these foreign companies come in and make, and they come in for the natural resources, they're greedy people. They come in for the natural resources, and the policy and the government corruption means that, oh yeah, let them take as much as they want and give us a small change. That's the politician. Give me a little thing now. Give me a little thing. Give me a few $1,000s now. We'll fix you up. This is what happens in Trinidad. So we don't have good enough policies in place that allows for these foreign investors to come in and share the wealth. Yes, you're going to make a little bit of a profit, maybe 10, 20% of the profit, but the rest of it goes back into Trinidad. Yes, you still make money, you still be rich. And the rest of it goes back into Trinidad, and we look at making our own refinery. We invest that money and we build our own refinery. We don't rely on them to do things for us. Listen, I really realize that I'm going on a bit here. The video is quite long now. I'm going to cut the video. I'm going to come back and do another part two. I'll do a part two as to what we need to do. But I'm going to end the video by saying we need to be more self-sufficient as a nation. We need to stop relying on imports. We import 80% of our food from America. That is ridiculous. That is silly. We cannot be a self-sufficient nation if we continue to work like that. We have to look at the likes of China and these countries who are self-sufficient. We've only got 1.4 million people. We're more than capable of doing this. We don't need to be importing all our food. We need to tap into agriculture. The government needs to invest in young people. Agriculture needs to be huge in Trinidad. I'm talking about agriculture now, but I could talk about tech, I could talk about tourism, I could talk about manufacturing, all of that untapped sources in Trinidad. We are not diverse enough as an economy, and we solely rely on oil and gas. That is not good enough. So if you're going to hold the next Prime Minister to account, these are the things we need to hold them to account for, and we can do it through the Trinidad Empowerment Network. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you guys on the next video. God bless. Take care. Peace.